Hey everyone, welcome back to AFTV and welcome to another 5pm live show here in the UK. But of course, you amazing Arsenal fans all around the world are tuning in. Well, it'll be morning for some of you, evening for some of you, but wherever you are around the world, hope you're having a good day. We wish you a good day for the rest of it. And thank you for joining this live. And if you're watching it later, after it's live, thank you for watching the video as well. I'm here with Laurie. Laurie, how you doing?
I'm all right, man.
You've been away for a week? You've had a bit of time to relax? How's it been?
Yeah, good. I was up in York,
nice.
North Yorkshire, in the northern part of the country, for those who don't know. Yeah, it was nice, man. Nice and pleasant. Very, very different to London, of course. But yeah, man, I had a good time. Myself and my partner went up there, chilled out, did a few sightseeing things, a few restaurants, bars and stuff like that. You know, the typical stuff you do when you're on vacation. But yeah, it was nice.
Nice.
Yeah,
well, you picked a good week because it was, listen, I don't like international football that much. It was all pretty dull.
Right. So I understand.
Well, now here we are for the big one, which is the North London derby. That's,
Not England, Germany then.
Well, listen, that is a big game, actually, in the sense of it's two teams with very good players, you know, competing in a, I guess on paper it's a competitive match, the Nations League. We know
it's glorified friendly, really.
Essentially. But, we've got the North London derby later this week, and we're not going to touch on it too much because there's going to be a lot to come. I know you've got your live show tomorrow, and there's been all sorts of previews and stuff coming out. So we can't, bog everyone down with pure Arsenal Tottenham content. We've got plenty of time in the week to do that. But it is a big week. It is a week where, once that Monday hits and that game's waiting for you the weekend, the tension starts to build. So I think the early question I want to ask is, when do you start to get nervous for the game? Or do you get nervous for the game?
Good question. You know what? For this particular game, I would be more nervous if we were playing away from home. I'm actually going into this game with a keen sense of anticipation, but I'm also pretty much optimistic to the point where I'm confident, but I'm not overconfident. Because, football is football, and, let's face it, Tottenham are a good team. Yeah. I don't think anybody can really hide from that. So it will be competitive. However, I am confident we can get the result. Yeah,
I'm going in with a sense of it's a lots of things. Yes, the nerves are there. Yes, the excitement is there because I always love watching Arsenal. I'm really intrigued as well. I'm really, if I were a neutral, I'd be very interested by this game. I think you've got two teams who this season have played very differently. I think Tottenham have been about being sensible, secure. There's a reason they haven't lost a game this season. But at the same time, maybe they've rode their luck at times. You think the Chelsea game, even beating Leicester, I'll never say that you win a game 6-2 and don't deserve to win it. However, the performance really didn't reflect a 6-2 victory. So they've got that firepower. They've been able to be somewhat resilient and yet find goals. Arsenal, on the other hand, lost a game that they played very well in, which I thought was a Man United game, but otherwise have had a real flair and exuberance about the way they're playing, which has been really enjoyable. So they're kind of a really good matchup in terms of styles. And I think it will just be a case of, if Arsenal do their thing, we can unsettle Spurs because we like to be on the front foot. But maybe if we're a bit off it and Tottenham are organised, they can hit us back. So I think a neutral will be very excited for this game.
Oh, 100%. And it's a massive game, first and foremost. And it's one that I think really Arsenal do need to win. I mean, it could be argued that at least if it's a draw, then you haven't lost. However, it's a kind of game where you earmark this game, you think, yeah, man, we need to win this game. Things are going well at the moment. They're playing well. They're getting results. But games like this, man, are like the acid test, really, isn't it, for the season? You want to be able to say you overcame the challenge of Spurs at home. And, I'm confident.
Well, I'm a big believer in watch the game, don't just look at the result. And when people were saying, but Arsenal haven't beaten anyone good, let's see how they do against Man United, I'd like to think that most people who weren't just trying to wind up their Arsenal mates would have come away from that and said, okay, in fairness, all right, you lost, all right, you were naive. There was a performance there that actually resembled what we'd seen in the 5 games before, so fair play, Arsenal are clearly playing quite well. But what you can't do is lose to Man United and then lose to Tottenham, and then it's quite literally any time you play a team that isn't in and around you or above you, that's the only time you're winning. Otherwise, you struggle. So there's that narrative there a little bit.
Yeah, they've kind of got that spectre looming over their head, isn't it?
I think
things
so.
Don't go well. People will no doubt bring that up and say, look, The two major teams you've played so far this season have both lost to.
Which
But
is
you
a
know what?
shame.
I have a slightly different mindset. I'm going into this game thinking we're at home, we're the favourites. Don't get me wrong, Spurs will be a stern test, a good challenge. But I think it's one that we, you know what I mean? We need to win games like this. I mean,
Yeah.
the game previously against Brentford, a lot of people said that would be a difficult game, including myself. I thought Brentford would test us. But on the day, we were, let's face it, rather comfortable winners. And
Yeah.
that did kind of surprise me, if I'm being honest, because I was expecting Brentford to be a real handful.
Mm-hmm.
And it was anything but, really.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to Brentford. It's just, like I said, I was expecting them to come at us and to, you know, be a real solid test.
Yeah.
And in the end, we did win quite comfortably.
Well, at the risk of repeating myself, there was someone who summed up really well. I was playing football yesterday and caught up with a mate of mine who's an Arsenal fan. He said, I said, we were really dominant, but we didn't really pepper their goal. And he said the dominance was reflected in how they did nothing rather than how we did a lot. And, you know, it was the way we limited them that was so impressive. So
I might be looking at it through rose-tinted glasses, but I watched the whole game, as I'm sure you did. For me, I never really felt threatened by Brentford on that.
No.
I thought we got off to a good start, controlled the game, and got the goals at the crucial times. And I think it was as comfortable as you would want.
For me, it's a credit.
Not expect, you would want.
For me, it's a credit to Arsenal because I think Brentford are a really good side, and I don't think it's, you know, when I'm saying everything I'm saying about that game, it's not to criticise them or troll Brentford fans. I say it out of almost to illustrate how impressed I was with Arsenal, because I don't think teams will do that to Brentford this season.
And if you listen to the post-match thoughts of the manager of Brentford, he pretty much echoed what me and you were saying there, which is that Arsenal were by far the better team. That takes a lot for the manager, the home manager, being beaten 3-0 at home, to say that and normally come up with excuses as to why they lost. He was quite open, honest and transparent, and he said, listen, man, we lost to a team today that were better than us. And I think he added and said, look, who I expect to go on and challenge for the title. He actually said that. So.
Yeah, he's always been good for that kind of stuff, Thomas Frank, in terms of the open and honesty and all that. Let's talk about the main news, I guess, that came out today. And it was that Raul Sanllehi, in an interview, I've got it here, I want to make sure I get it right, interviewed by Dermot Corrigan. It's in The Athletic. I've got to say, it's a great title. Raul Sanllehi quote, I had to lay off 55 people at Arsenal without knowing I was the 56th. I mean, that's a good line. There's a good ring to that. It's a good line. And actually, the article talks as well a lot about sort of what he's doing at Zaragoza and stuff like that. But there's obviously a section on Arsenal which he says that he loved Arsenal. He says, you cannot imagine the people, the club, the history of the club. I really felt I was at top of the world there. I love the owners, the Cronkies. But the last 10 months there were horrible. I had to lay off 55 people without knowing I was the 56th. So, yeah, those are basically the first two paragraphs of the article. Go check that out in The Athletic. One of the things he talked about was the model he believes in that was inspired by his time at Barcelona. Apparently the model that he's now, it says here, Sanllehi, so this is from the article. Sanllehi says his dream team of Arteta, Edu, Farming, Mertesacker fitted a circular club management model he learned in 2 decades at Barcelona and is now implementing at Zaragoza. So he clearly has this understanding of how the footballing structure should work and how that they all complement each other, from the financial side of things to the coaching of the team, to the recruitment, to the production of academy players, should all come together with the same vision and manage the club. Now, for a little while we did that. We had the likes of Sven Mislintat there. Vinay's been there for most of that. Edu came a little bit later than Sanllehi. Then Arteta was kind of the last piece because they moved Unai Emery on. And when Sanllehi was moved on, we then saw a change in which Arteta's position as first team coach, which is what he was originally employed under, changed and he became Arsenal manager. Now, there's a quote in here. While I get your thoughts, I'll find the exact quote because it's a long article and I managed to lose it. But he said that he feels that it's a mistake, the route that Arsenal are going on, basically putting everything on a manager. We'll differentiate the different things in a sec, but just quickly, kind of your reaction or early thoughts to that kind of thing.
Well, one thing I would say is that I think it's fairly obvious, especially in modern day football, that having the correct structures in place are vital if a team is to be successful. So yes, I do agree in a proper structure. However, I would also say that, you know, it doesn't necessitate that everyone has to follow the same structure. And ultimately, football is a results game, a results-based business, as we all know and accept. So I think it's too early for him to say that any one way is right, because if Arsenal have a successful season, then obviously their structure that they're using at present is vindicated. So ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think so. I found the quotes. They're very interesting, actually. He says, I do not agree when clubs call the first team coach the manager, he says. First team coach is the first team coach. That is enough. Nowadays, the workload is overwhelming and I need him to concentrate on the first team. Anything that distracts you from that is not your responsibility. Travel arrangements, the pitch, salary budget, medical department, we will get other people to do that. The first team coach is short-term oriented, just win tonight's game. The rest of the article goes on to say that when Sanyehi was fired in August 2020, Arsenal's owners streamlined the model. Edu and Arteta's responsibilities expanded into areas he had been in charge of. Arteta's job title was changed from first team coach to first team manager. Sanyehi believes this was a mistake, that the once circular model is now squashed out of shape. Now here's the quote. They have betrayed the model a little bit now, he says, by going back to the manager at the top. That is a mistake, but that is their mistake. I would not have allowed that to happen, but that's fine. It is working so far for them. But that's enough of Arsenal. Let's get back to Zaragoza. So I want to clarify a few things before we discuss this in more detail. Firstly, he's actually very complimentary of Arsenal and the Cronkies and what a great time he had there. So I don't really take any of that as him being critical or as criticism anyway. I think it's just his opinion on how football should run, and he doesn't think they're going about it the right way.
And not only that, I get from that he's trying careful not to sound bitter in any way.
Yeah. So. And I think when you read the whole quote and the whole text, I don't think it comes across that way. So that's fine.
I mean, let's face it, he's in a job now. With respect to Zaragoza, it's not as big as the Arsenal job, but you know, he's landed on his feet, hasn't he? So
he was always going to find work. Yeah. No, I'm sure he's absolutely fine. I'm sure he's great. The other thing I wanted to clarify was quite this difference between first team coach and manager. And I think the best way to look at it is Chelsea. Chelsea for a long time under Abramovich had first team coaches, I believe anyway. And essentially the first team coach, here are my players, I'm going to work with them, I'm going to focus on getting the absolute best performances and results I can out of this team. Now, yes, you'd imagine at any club that, and I don't know how it would work with Chelsea, but any club that wanted to, you know, get the best out of their manager would liaise with them over what players they wanted to sign and who from the youth team they like and will want to promote, whatever. But generally, the development of young players left to the youth department and the youth coach, whatever. We have that with Per Mertesacker. But the recruitment would basically be like, listen, we're going to give you some of your signings. We're also going to give you club signings. We're also going to give you players that we believe. And that's what they're saying recently about Chelsea. They sacked Tuchel, but Cucurella, Koulibaly, who else they brought in? Fofana. They were players that were basically seen as any first team coach would be happy to work with them. So there's the difference there where the manager would have more say. They'd be a part of the negotiations regularly on the phone, maybe, you know, being part of shortlisting the players that they want, being a part in actually trying to negotiate their signing and getting them to the club, maybe deciding what fee would be worth paying for them or whatever. So there is a difference between the two. Wenger was very much a manager. Unai Emery was very much a first team coach. We've heard his quotes. He wanted Partey and Zaha. He got Pepe and Torreira. And Arteta was very much a first team coach who's now become manager. So those are the...
I would suggest, and I'm suggesting, obviously I don't know, but I'm just looking at Arteta as a person, the way I see him, I would imagine that he kind of had a chat with the powers that be and said, look, I want a more enhanced role. I want to be the manager. I want to have control of things. Because I think I've said this to you on match days. One thing I've noticed about Arteta is just by the way he communicates with the players, he's very hands-on.
Yeah.
To the point where sometimes I actually feel he's micromanaging the players. I've always said to people that I'd hate to be a left back on the same side as Arteta because he's literally telling you where to run. Have you noticed it?
Yeah.
And when he's on the side, and I think that carries over into how he is in an everyday role as a manager. So he probably feels that in order for him to succeed at this job or give him the best chance of succeeding, he needs to have a say in everyday matters at the club. Now, the model that Sanelli appears to be relating to is one where a lot of those responsibilities are not so much taken away, but alleviated from the manager so that he can give his full focus to match day. Mm-hmm. Whereas I would say that Arteta strikes me as the type of person that he wants to have pretty much control or a say in everything that goes on at the club. And if it's not right or to his way of thinking, then he wants to be able to have an input into how things are done.
You know, as you were talking about that, I remember an article on Sky Sports, and I'm trying to look it up because I want to get it right. But essentially, when Arsene Wenger left, there were people at the club who were making the decision. I think Sanyehi was one of them, I think. Please let me know in the comment section if I'm wrong. Sven Mislintat was definitely one of them. He was now one of the chief scouts. They called him Diamond Eye, I think, because of his, the players he'd scouted and picked out. I think the best for us was Mavropanos, actually, and he didn't even get a chance.
That's not a glowing recommendation.
Well, he's a decent player, actually. I like Mavropanos.
He was, but where is he now?
Well, I think he's doing all right. I can't remember. I think he might be at Stuttgart, or is he still? Anyway, I can't remember. But anyway, a lot of them didn't work out, to be fair. But you basically had the different staff pulling in different directions with the kind of manager they wanted. Obviously, Kieran is saying Mavropanos wasn't it. Well, we don't really see enough of him. I think he's done really well in the Bundesliga, to be fair. So this is where I stand in it all. This is the big question. Is Arsenal's manager model a mistake? I've got there's kind of two sides I approach it from. First of all, it's all about pulling in the right direction. Now, as long as the ideas are correct, as long as the idea is right, I don't mind if there's a team of 6 working on it or a team of 2.
When you say the idea is right, sorry to interrupt you, are you saying in terms of you wait till the end of the season and see if the idea is right, or
that's the thing? Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Because this is what I said. Ultimately, results are going to dictate everything. But
anyway, That's it. It's all down to results. Ultimately, it's all down to results. If Arsenal go on and become a side that compete for Premier League and Champions League trophies, and the youngsters are brilliant, whatever, then you'll say Arsenal's model was perfect because that's what they did. If you look at Liverpool and Man City, they've done it in slightly different ways, from the way they play football to the way their managers have had to work with. Klopp has spent money, don't get me wrong, but he's also done really well to pick out players like Andrew Robertson, for example. They've had to also sell to buy at times, the likes of Coutinho, Suarez. So, both clubs have gone about it in slightly different ways. And the right answer is just completely dependent on results. There's no one way to play football. There's probably no one way to run a football club. What I would say is, if everyone's pulling in the right direction, whether it's 2 or 6 of them or whatever, then I'm fine with it. But I like the idea of there being a driving force in someone like Mikel Arteta, who is the guy. Because when you've got 3 or 4 people or 5 people who all kind of have their say in some way, shape or form, take the Aubameyang thing in January. We saw on that documentary, Edu felt that he needed to be reintegrated. I think Vinay felt the same. I can't remember, maybe Richard Garlick felt a similar thing. But ultimately, it didn't matter because they backed their man Arteta, who said, "Gone. I want him out. If you can do a deal, do it." And so it probably saved a lot of back and forth, and they went with Arteta's thing, and now look where we are because of it. All respect to Aubameyang, and he's got his move to Chelsea. He did great at Barcelona, and I still really like the guy, and I'm not hurt by his move to Chelsea. But what I'm saying is, ultimately, we're in a better position. And we, if he'd been first team coach, maybe they'd have gone with 3 votes out of the 4, and we'd still have Aubameyang, or would we have Jesus? And so it's very difficult. I like that one decision maker that ultimately is closer to the team than anyone else, that is driving everything else that happens at the club.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that. And like I said, it kind of fits with the kind of perspective I have of Arteta. He seems to be a guy that likes to control things, or if not control, he wants to have a say in how things are run at the club at pretty much at every level. From the youth team, I mean, he recently attracted some criticism for
playing Ethan Nwaneri.
Yeah, some people saw that as whatever. We're not going to go into that now, but he's got a strong mind. Arteta, whatever you want to say about him, he looks like a strong-minded individual that has his opinions, believes in those opinions, and he wants to do things his way. And I think that's what we're seeing. He probably, and I say probably because I don't know, I would imagine that he had, because he's supposed to be quite close with Josh Kroenke.
Yeah.
And he's probably said to Kroenke, look, with respect, bro. He probably didn't say bro. But he's probably said to him, look, you know, you've given me this job. In order for me to do the job to the best of my ability, I need to have a control or a say in what goes on at all levels of this club. And I need to be that person who makes the final decisions on things. And it would appear, certainly for the time being, that he's got his way on that.
Well, these things, for me, they have to be constantly changing and movable. And what I mean by that is, when Arteta joined Arsenal, we were a mess. I mean, I'd actually never known the club worse. And I know we went through a worse, maybe results-wise, we went through a worse period a little bit later under Arteta in the 2021 season. But actually, before, it was like, you know, we had David Luiz, who I actually thought ended up being all right for us, but it was another like ex-Chelsea player at the club. And then Pepe, we spent 72 million on, and you're thinking, where did that money come from? And then the Ozil thing with him and Emery was always a bit strange. So it was a pretty bad place. And when he came in, settled things down, Arteta, and then won the FA Cup, I think there was this sense of everyone here buys into his ideas, and he probably knows more about football than we've forgotten. Let's back this guy. Like, if we're going to do it, let's actually really do it. Now, think we've seen two examples of that. In that moment when they appointed him as manager, promoted him from first team coach, they didn't need to do it. As in, from our perspective, they didn't need to go and give him that promotion. You know, he was very new into the job, only 6 months, but they did it. And then, after that terrible 2021 season, where we finished 8th, out of Europe, some of the results were awful. I think how many games did we lose at home, albeit a lot of it was behind closed doors, but still no excuse, we were terrible. I think they doubled down and they went, okay, we can get rid of this guy and maybe go for a Graham Potter, who else, and see what we can do. Or we stick with our guns and we back him. What do? They gave him 150 million to spend. He brought in Ramsdale, White, and you're thinking, well, White for 50 million? Ramsdale, really? And now look where we are. So I think they decided in that moment, we are backing this guy. We're going to really give him time. And the only way to back him is to make him the manager and make sure that those decisions, however big or small, we are very much listening to what he says, or if not, going with ultimately his decision.
No, you make some very valid points there. I must admit, and I'm going to keep it 100 here, I'm going to keep it real. And I'm not saying that's what I was advocating, but I think Mikel Arteta can consider himself, when you look at, you know, the wider spectrum of how things operate in the Premier League, at top flight football, he could be considered slightly fortunate to have gone into this season being manager of Arsenal. It was a very disappointing end to the season.
Oh, on the back of last season's form. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, some clubs might have hit the, you know what I mean?
Some. I would have strongly disagreed with any club that did. I think after the 2021 season, when we finished 8th, I think a lot of clubs might have parted ways during that period where it got really bad.
It's just that Champions League football kind of looked forlorn, didn't it?
At one
point, you had the 8th place, which was disappointing.
4 points with 3 games to go,
And then the way we kind of, let's be honest, let's keep it 100, we imploded at the end of the season. Some boards might have looked at that and said, you know what, this is probably the right time to make a change and bring in somebody experienced. And, you know, and let's face it, if Arsenal really wanted to throw the checkbook at it, they probably would have got a top flight manager from somewhere, had they. But then, to be fair to them, they've looked at the situation and thought, you know what, this guy has potential. He's a young manager. We're not going to be that club that chops and changes, you know what I mean, all the time. So let's give him a chance. They probably sat down with him and said, look, you know, we see the potential in you. Is there any way we as a board can assist you in where you want to go? I mean, hence the project that they talked about so openly. So my guess is that they sat down with him and they had a chat, and Arteta said, look, love the job, love working with me, I will deliver this.
And we're back. Apologies for that, guys. But thank you for sticking with us. Really appreciate it. Nearly 1,000 view live. Hit the like button. Not because of the lag, but because you enjoy the show and the conversation we've been having. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet as well. And go check out the David Dean interview as well that Robbie did as well. That was so fascinating. So go check that out. I want to end on this because I'm really enjoying it. We're actually saying I'm really enjoying these conversations to understand the model at Arsenal. There were some great comments. So actually, let me just get them up because there was Leandro says, I completely agree with Arteta wanting to have control. I would not leave my destiny in anyone else's hands. Let me be the reason I fail and no one else. And I think Leandro, he added this. At the end of the day, if the manager is who gets bashed publicly, I preferred being bashed for a decision I made than one I didn't. Micromanage away. And I understand that. I actually...
do.
You know,
And you know what as well? I would say this as well. Credit to Arteta for pulling that off, if that's what he's done. Because, again, I had my reservations about him taking over. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be like, come and say, I really wanted to. There was other guys, and I'm not going to name them now. It's no point. That I'd seen ahead of him in the pecking order for getting the job. I was quite surprised when he got the job. Anyway, he got the job. And it would appear 2 years in, he's managed to get the hierarchy at Arsenal to bend to his will in terms of how he wants the club run. There was a school of thought, certainly early on when he got the job, that the only reason why he got that job was because there's that symbiotic relationship with the board where he's not really going to challenge them that much. So then, he can be put out there, and if we don't quite do what we're supposed to do, then it's all cozy with them. But it would appear that he's asserted himself.
Well, All or Nothing suggested that he's an incredibly driven man, and he's incredibly ambitious as well. He would say before the Man City game, what was it? Pass forward or think forward, act forward, something like that. He was basically saying, be progressive, be on the front foot, be proactive is the word I'm looking for. So I think he does want Arsenal to be a side that can go toe to toe with Man City. I think he's got high aspirations, and we've seen him before. I remember when we beat Liverpool 2-1 behind closed doors, and he basically said something like, someone asked, are you closing the gap? He went, no, the gap's still enormous. That was back in 2020. So I think he's got high aspirations. But the thing I'd say, for everything I've just said about having a driving force, which is definitely Mikel Arteta, the word process, I can't believe we've gone 29 minutes into the show without using the word process, right? A word that's actually kind of been used to, almost take the piss a little bit about what Arsenal try and do with Arteta. But I think, and I've said this before on other shows, a really, really, really good process doesn't live and die with Arteta. If Arsenal are smart, which I think they are proving that they're being more savvy, for sure, they have all this stuff in place. They have Mikel Arteta, who's driving it. But if he doesn't get the results and ultimately have to move him on, or he does so well that... I'm so sorry.
It happens again.
I'm so sorry. We're having such a good discussion. Well, I think we are anyway. But the internet's causing us problems. But anyway, the point I was making, maybe it's the internet telling me to hurry up with the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is Arsenal, great, Arteta, you run it, you're the driving force, we back our manager, but we got someone ready in case this doesn't go the way we want. And that's how I think you build a genuine, sustainable, long-term project, vision, process, whatever you want to call it, that can bring Arsenal success for many years to come. I'm trying to think of clubs that do it really well, but you look at Brentford, for example, they were on the up, and then they've had plenty of managers move on. And then they had Dean Smith, who then left them for Villa. Thomas Frank came in. Okay, it took him a little bit of time to sort of get his ideas across, but ultimately he was in line with what the club wanted to do. He progressed it, and then they got promoted. I think clubs like Brighton, for example, they've gone and got De Zerbi. Well, I don't know anything about him. From the little I have seen, it sounds like he's going to have very similar ideas to Graham Potter in the way he wants to play the game. Another great example was, do you remember when Swansea had Brendan Rodgers? Yeah. They lost him to Liverpool and they brought in Michael Laudrup.
That's right.
Same thing. And he built on it, and he built a better Swansea team. So I'm fine with this model. I'm really fine with any model. But as long as you've got your contingency ready, if someone comes in and bids 200 million for Gabriel Jesus and we lose him, have you got the next Gabriel Jesus ready? If Saliba doesn't sign a contract, Real Madrid getting for 85 million, have you got the next Saliba? And that's how I think you build that longevity.
Well, we saw what happened with Man United earlier in the season and even last season. And a lot of people speculating as to say that one of the reasons that they were failing is because their structures are not right.
Yeah.
And so you look at Arsenal, and they seem like they have a fairly stable structure at the moment. They believe in the manager. They've entrusted him with a lot of money. at the moment things are paying off. But the slight reservation I have with all these things is that at the top level, football is less of a long-term.
That is very true. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a results-based business. So at the end of the day, if we get to May 2023 and we're outside the top 4, people are going to say ultimately the process not worked.
Yeah.
And they're going to be calling for the manager's head. It's a ruthless environment.
It is ruthless, but I think if you look at, for example, Chelsea pre-Todd Bowley, you could say that while their vision and their structure wasn't exactly for the benefit of the academy players or the managers they appointed, you know, they weren't exactly going to benefit from it long term. It was, you could say, a consistent over 15 plus years method of short-termism. We're going to hire you, here's your money, here's some great players, win. Okay, you're not winning anymore, gone. Let's get the next guy in, let's get a bounce, let's see if they respond, add some more great players.
That model existed at Chelsea for a number of years, pre-Todd Bowley, and it worked for them, didn't it? Similarly, at the other end of the spectrum, with Watford, they had a similar type of system whereby they were going through managers like anyone's business.
It's a great
However,
point.
they were being kept in the Premier League up until recently.
Yeah.
So it could be argued that that model was even more ruthless than Chelsea's, but it kept them in the Premier League for a number of years.
Yeah,
so
very true. There's no right or wrong.
There's no right or wrong, which is why I said ultimately it's a results-based business.
Yeah.
And whilst I appreciate what Arsenal are trying to do, if we get to May 2023 and we've not achieved those minimum requirements, what a lot of people feel, which is the Champions League, then people are going to be saying, sorry, but the process hasn't worked.
I get it.
And I think, to be fair to Arteta, he's recognised that. And he said, well, listen, man, so if we're going to do it, and I'm going to be the manager, I'm going to be the fall guy, you guys have got to trust me, and we're going to do it my way, because this is the way I want to run my ship.
Yeah. You know what I'd love? Like, if everything really was going perfectly at Arsenal, it would be Arteta to be here and be successful for like another 5, 6, 7 years, and be, competing or winning for titles. People might laugh at that, but that's the aspirations we want to have.
Oh, yeah.
I've got no doubt that's the aspirations he has. I'd love that to happen. Bring us our first Champions League deal. That'd be amazing. Or whatever he achieves. The day he goes, Carlos Cuesta or something, who's there on the coaching staff, is just promoted to manager, and it's like you were there for it all, and now it's your time. That for me would feel like.
You're saying there's a continuation.
I would love that if that were. I don't know if that's the plan. I don't know if that's even. Who knows? I mean, Carlos Cuesta. I mean, we talked about Arteta barely having any experience. At least he was assistant to Pep Guardiola. We're looking at Carlos Cuesta got even less. But
and he did come with a glowing recommendation.
Of course,
because everybody that I saw in print and in other ways was saying, listen, okay, he's not got the experience, but this guy is an excellent coach. He's very well regarded and highly thought of by not just Pep and his little cabal of coaches and managers, but the players as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and people were even saying, weren't they, that a number of people have come forward and said, even when he was a player, he was already exhibiting signs of a man that would go on to manage and manage successfully. I've heard that quite a few times being said about Arteta. So, I mean, listen, at the moment, things are going well. I think it's fair to say that he's overachieving at the moment, isn't he? I know it's
he's had a better start to the season than most people would have expected,
absolutely.
and that includes a loss to Man United.
Yeah. I mean, how many people would have predicted that 7, 8 games in, Arsenal will be top of the table?
Yeah,
you know what I mean, ahead of Man City, Liverpool, and the likes. So it's going well.
It is going well, but let's be on it. It's Saturday. Appreciate the comment, Blaze John. Thank you. Says James is spot on. You need to have production pipeline for every position, every role. Arsenal understands stability. Arteta will not leave lightly. I don't think he will, and I'm glad that I'm glad that you agree. And I hope they do have a pipeline of replacements ready to go, and they understand who they're keeping an eye on and what's to come in the future. Look, it's a Monday, so we are a little light on a lot of news. I've really enjoyed this discussion.
Yeah.
I want to just get your thoughts on a couple of things really, really quickly. You touched on it there. Watford sacking their manager. I know this isn't Arsenal-related news, but I guess they share a training ground with them. So Arteta must be turning up to London Colney every day. Welcome. You won't be here long. I won't bother giving you the tour. But I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? I can't speak for Watford and Watford fans. I actually know someone who's a Watford fan, and I was just looking at the Championship table. I mean, they really do go through managers so quickly. I think they're sitting 10th. In the 10th, 14.
I must admit, I don't.
They're
like
a point off the. They're a point
Yeah.
off the playoff places. They're 9 off top. I mean, I'm not saying 3 wins out of 10 isn't great, but listen, Watford fans, you tell me. What do I know?
But they've
about
had a
your
lot
club?
of success with that model in previous years in terms of keeping them in the Premier League. Now the dynamic is slightly different. They're trying to get back to the Premier League, trying to get back to the promise.
Well, they got back in, but then they dropped back out.
Exactly,
So
So they're looking at that and thinking, if things go even slightly awry, we've got to act. So it could be that this might be.
how much must it be costing?
Well,
I mean, they must be handing out 1-year deals. Listen, we can't really promise you're going to be here much longer than that. So
I'm pretty sure that is a conversation that they, when they have these managers and they interview them for the jobs.
Yeah.
They're saying to them, listen, we operate slightly different here at Watford. You may have seen that, we will pull the trigger if it's necessary. We will give you all the support you need while you're here.
Yeah.
However, it's a results-based business, and if things are not going well, this is the model to which we operate. Are you happy to take the job under these circumstances? And presumably the managers are saying, yeah.
Well,
because you always want to be that guy that's going to want to break the mold.
That's it. And actually, that's very interesting because we were only just talking about no approach is the right or wrong one necessarily. If the results are there, you're happy with the way they're operating. And actually, Watford, you're right. They might be so transparent. They might be saying everything you've said, which is, we might fire you in 3 months if you don't deliver. We believe in instant results. We believe you've got the players. We don't believe football's that complicated. You should figure it out. And we've had plenty of managers who have figured it out, getting out of the Championship. And if that's their model, fair play to them. I just find it very, very funny. It
is rather odd. However, in previous years, it has worked for them. And that's the model they've adopted. And that's the route they're going down. Like I said, Chelsea, at the other end of the spectrum, was very similar.
Yeah.
Managers were losing the job at Chelsea after having won the Champions League. Real Madrid have a very similar way of doing their thing.
They are. I feel like they're not quite as ruthless, but they're. I think they'd like to be. I think they'd like to be a little bit more. Have a little bit more long term, but then they realise that Modric and Kroos at 35 are still balling out on the pitch, and actually maybe let's just give them a manager who will win with them now. But let's quickly touch on England. I know we mentioned it earlier in the show, and I say jokingly, though I was completely and utterly wholeheartedly serious that I do not really enjoy the international break. Though I appreciate it's necessary. It's the one thing just because I don't appreciate it doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. But England will face Germany tonight. We had the whole Ben White thing. I know you were on a live with Cecil talking about his exclusion from the squad, actually. And now I think we're seeing Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't in the matchday squad for tonight. Ivan Toney wasn't the other day, but is for today. As someone who I imagine will be supporting England come the World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I say it
like
I won't be. I mean, I probably will be, really. But, it's worrying signs or not really?
You know what? Listen, they've not won in 5 games. The football's not been very good.
You're being kind.
Yeah, absolutely. The mood in the camp is not great. When I say the mood in the camp, the players seem to be behind the manager. I would say that. But the media and the fans.
The fans are. I've never seen England fans so universally just like we want someone else. I think the question is whether they would actually do it before the World Cup. I think everyone agrees that at least from when that final was played onwards, Southgate's not the man.
Well, I tend to be a bit more practical in these types of things. Listen, they are not going to sack Gareth Southgate before the World Cup. Even if England were to lose tonight comfortably, I don't see that happening. You have to also take into account there are a number of teams at the moment that are not playing well, including Germany themselves. I mean, look at France. They're the World Cup winners, and they're going through a woeful time at the moment. Listen, England have the World Cup coming up in a few months' time. Let's be honest, the group, the qualifying group that they're in is, let's be honest, man, it's without sounding disrespectful to the other countries, it's a group that England should and will qualify from. And then, you get to the knockout stages and pretty much anything can happen. So
I think USA and Wales will surprise us, and Iran might well do as well. But I've not really watched much of Iran. I mentioned USA and Wales because some of the players that the USA produced
Wales
recently
are not playing that well at the moment.
Are they not?
Been relegated from the?
Oh, okay. Yeah, but Gareth Bale will chuck one in, won't he, from 30 yards? But no, I know what you mean.
Fairly aging Gareth Bale.
No, I get what you're saying. He I think he went to the MLS really just enjoy his football and get fit for that World Cup.
Yeah.
Then you've got, players
Aaron
like
Ramsey, who, let's face it, he's getting on in years. He's a bit injury prone.
Yeah,
I'm sure Wales.
I think they're causing them problems.
I think
will. USA players like Christian Pulisic, who I know he's not been playing that well for Chelsea, but I still think he's a good player. And then Brendan Aronson, who started really well for Leeds. He's done Tyler Adams as well. So I think they've got some players.
But if England cannot qualify from that group, then they're in a shocking state, really.
Well, you'd imagine Southgate surely wouldn't survive that, but we don't know. We're going to find out tonight how they look against England.
I'm actually quite looking forward to the game because, it's at Wembley. I would imagine it'll be a full house, won't it? It's the last game before the World Cup for England. I'm hoping that the fans will give them a good send-off, and I hope it goes well tonight. On the Gareth Southgate issue, he's not the most innovative and creative and expansive of
What's
managers.
the opposite of creative? It's
well, the opposite of creative is destructive. I wouldn't say he's destructive.
He's not. He's definitely not destructive. I think he's done a lot. This is what I give him credit for. I made a video on it actually on my own channel. He's done a lot for settling down the kind of hoo-ha around the team and building a really good relationship between the team and the media and the fans as well. And in that sense, he's always been a very good face for the England team. I think he's been fantastic in that sense. He's spoken on some very important issues very well, I think. But just as a tactician and as a manager and someone who selects the players, I just don't.
Yeah, his tactical nous is not at the level of the top coaches in the game. Let's just keep it 100. It isn't.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, he's brought some other things to the table which have helped improve England. And let's face it, his record in competitions is good, isn't it?
Yeah,
you can argue
on
about,
paper, you can't really argue with what he's done.
He got to the semi-final of the World Cup. He got to the final of the Euros. And so that in itself, I would imagine, would have given him enough mileage to say, right, I'm going to take this on. They're not in the best of the form at the moment, but I just happen to believe that once we get going for real, those players, and let's face it, there are a number of quality players in that team, they'll step up. And I'm expecting them to at least get out in the qualifying. In fact, I'm going to go as far as to say I would imagine, unless they get a bad luck of the draw, they will get to the semi-finals of the World Cup.
Okay. Well, we'll see. June says...
If they don't, I would regard that as failure.
Oh, massively. June says Saka at left wing-back was criminal, second most assists in the league, so why Southgate punishing him with defensive duties? Guys, if you want to follow everyone's live reaction to that match, England versus Germany tonight, it is live on DR Sports. Go check that out. I believe we've got Ty in the building, Abby Summers, lead judges will all be there. Are you there? No?
I'll be watching.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't deemed fit to be part of that all-star cast. But hey, man, I'm not hating on that. Listen, it is what it is. I've got to earn my place.
I've got huge love for DR Sports and everything they do there. But the last two watch-alongs they chucked me on were the two England-Italy games. And they might be the two worst games I've seen in my life. So count yourself lucky that you don't have to be... Yeah.
I think tonight, though, we might see England try and play a little bit because the manager's under pressure. You never know. Maybe it'll
spark something. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
And Germany are traditional enemies in a football sense. I'm looking forward to the game. I'm hopeful.
Well, let's see. All right, guys. Laurie, I really hope you've enjoyed this.
Nice one.
I've enjoyed it a lot, guys. Hope you have too. It's been a very interesting discussion. Was Arsenal's decision to make Mikel Arteta the manager and go with the manager model again, which we haven't seen since Wenger, of course, Emery was first team coach, was that a mistake? Raul Sanyehi seems to think it was. Go check out his article. Let me actually credit it properly because we based our whole discussion around it. Dermot Corrigan's article, I hope I pronounced that right, in The Athletic. Go check it out. Great headline. Raul Sanyehi, I had to lay off 55 people at Arsenal without knowing I was the 56th. So he talks a bit about that, his actual love for the Kroenkes, the ideas he has for football and the structures and running it and all that. So it's interesting.
I think Raul, on a closing note, I think Raul found out, if he didn't know already, how much of a ruthless existence Premier League football can be.
Yeah, that's very true. Guys, really hope you've enjoyed it. We have. We'll see you on the next one.